Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Data-Driven Safety Analysis virtual workshop series presented in coordination with the Vision Zero Central Florida initiatives, the Federal Highway Administration, and MetroPlan Orlando. This workshop series will explore how geometric road design, traffic control, and other factors affect roadway safety. Participants will learn crash prediction methodologies from the AASHTO Highway Safety Manual. My name is Taylor Laurent from MetroPlan Orlando, and I welcome you to the third and final session of this workshop series. Today's workshop will be recorded and available to rewatch on the MetroPlan Orlando YouTube channel. If you have any questions during today's workshop, please type your question into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We've learned a wealth of information from John McFadden over the past two sessions, and today's workshop will be led by his colleague, Derek Troyer. Derek is a member of the FHWA Resource Center Safety and Design Technical Service Team, with over 15 years of combined engineering and planning experience focusing on transportation and safety. He is a registered engineer in Ohio and has a master's degree in city and regional planning. He currently supports several national initiatives, including data-driven safety analysis, local, rural, and tribal road safety, local road safety plans, and complete streets. Derek also serves as the secretary of the Transportation Research Board's Safety Performance and Analysis Committee and works to implement research into practice. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Derek to start our training.
Perfect. Thank you, Taylor. So John hasn't abandoned you. He's here in spirit. No, he's here. So I first want to start out. So we're going to go into another tool today. I believe you learned about ISAT-E on the last session, and then John also covered kind of the nuts and bolts of crash prediction modeling. So just want to start out, if you have any questions, go ahead and raise your hand or type something in the chat pod or Q&A. The Q&A pod's there too that we can try to answer throughout the session. So John's going to help me with that today. No, it was a one-man show last week. So happy to see everyone here today. But yeah, we're going to go into FHWA's tool. It is a software application, which is a little bit different than the spreadsheet, which has its own issues, but we're dealing with the tools we have. And then we'll talk about some of the features, how to enter the data into the tool, as well as some of the customization features that you can do. So just want to give anybody have any questions? The tough questions I'll send to John, because it's Friday morning and he made me do this. Ask.
There are no questions in the Q&A or in the chat pod at this time.
We'll get you warmed up. All right, so I'm going to ask a question then, and I'm going to make you find your raise your hand button. How many people currently have IHSDM installed on their machine or downloaded to their machine? So go ahead and, if you, fingers crossed that somebody raises their hand. John, can you raise your hand? Anyone? It's concerning. All right. Oh, we got one. Perfect. So I'll show you today where to get it. It's a little bit different than most installations. It's not an installation at all, so you don't need IT support, which probably scares them. So we'll just keep that on the down low. Perfect. Glad to see somebody has it installed. So we'll maybe call on you a little bit more later to talk about your experiences. So perfect. So today we're going to go over IHSDM as I explained, but we'll talk about the scope and purpose of the tool, also kind of how to enter the data into the application, as well as gotcha. Demonstrate the ability to complete the workflow. So just like any of these tools, as you saw with ISAT-E, it's kind of a process, right? And you do this, you do this. IHSDM is a little bit more fluid, so you can go back and forth a little bit easier and tweak things. So we'll talk about site-based and station-based entering data, and they definitely have, one looks very similar to a spreadsheet, and the other one is more like an actual software application. So really, there's a lot of modules in IHSTM, but I'm going to focus on the crash prediction model. That's the one I'm most familiar with. But there is some policy reviews for a 2-lane rural road, so you understand if it meets the design criteria of the Green Book, different editions. But it's mainly a quantitative approach for evaluating highway safety. There is the main module of crash prediction. And then we'll talk about the way to enter stuff as well. So really getting into the why. So why would you use IHSTM? So just like ISAT-E, it helps you make design decisions, right? So understanding the implications of what your shoulder widths are, what your lane widths are, the curvature of maybe your off ramp, right? So it helps you make that design decision as you move forward. And doing some trade-offs. So there's always the trade-off with cost, environmental, all these other things. But you're weighing the safety benefits of that alternative design versus maybe the full design build. But it also helps us engineers and planners to justify our decisions, right? The one thing we've talked about over and over in performance-based practical design is document your decisions. We went to school for a reason, and we're not just supposed to look up a number in the book. So hopefully we're adjusting our design practices to better fit the needs of the communities, and this tool will help you make those decisions. So really, what is it? So it's a suite of tools that does a lot of stuff. Again, we're going to focus on this crash prediction area, and it does faithfully implement Highway Safety Manual Part C predictive methods, including the supplements. And it also has some other things in there that I'll touch on the next slide. But it really is kind of that's its main use, is that crash prediction module. It also has the policy review module, which I alluded to. So it's kind of that nominal safety. Is it there, or does it meet the guidance design criteria or not? And then it has a few other modules that are getting really outdated, so we don't even promote them really. So it will do a traffic analysis. It's like early 2000s analysis, so there's been a lot of advancements since then in that area. So we kind of really try to shy away from using some of these other modules as they kind of get outdated. So the crash prediction model has definitely been kept up to date. So what's in it? So you can use for the 2-lane rural highways, you can use all those modules that was on the previous screen, right? So it will do the policy review and the design reviews. Now, for multi-lane rurals, it will also do the policy review and your crash predictions. Urban and suburban, it's just crash prediction. Freeways, you just get the gist, right? It slowly just becomes crash prediction because that's what's been maintained over the years. It is, we have added also in the last release, so the last ever release is roundabouts. We've added some one-way streets. We've added, so in the current edition of the Highway Safety Manual, there are pretty much the urban and suburban arterials only go up to 5 lanes, so 2 lanes in each direction plus a center turn lane. We've added 6 lanes plus information, so 6, 8-lane arterials are also in there. Now they're not calibrated to the other ones, so your state would need to have calibration factors to be able to make comparisons if you're trying to go from a 4-lane to a 6-lane and make that comparison. So just be cautious of, I'm sure John mentioned the importance of calibration and making all these numbers match up in space and time to make comparisons. So without that component, the decisions you make may be misleading. So really, it's really trying to understand how we take our existing conditions, and if we want to change it, alter it, or maybe see just how it's performing compared to the peer group or the predicted crash frequency. So how many we would expect to be there over a long term. So that's really the gist of what's included in this. Trying to think if there's anything else. Hopefully I mentioned roundabouts. They're in there. That one's going to change quite a bit with the second edition of the Highway Safety Manual. So in the crash prediction model, so the main feature, right, it predicts crash frequencies on highways, segments, intersections, and interchanges and evaluates the safety impacts and improvements. So you can go through an alternatives analysis and compare the outputs of those design alternatives. And then it also has this economic feature where it will compare the cost of a project and the safety benefits and give you a result of a benefit cost analysis or cost effectiveness. There's like 4 different ones that the Highway Safety Manual has in it, and they're all added into the application. So it does faithfully implement that Part C analysis. So some people have tried to use this tool for more of a network screening application, and it's really not meant for that. It's really meant for shorter, not shorter. So you can do a 30-mile freeway segment, but it's not meant to look at 2,000 miles of rural 2-lane roads. It's not, the performance isn't there for the application. Some people would disagree with me. If you want to run it overnight, it'll work. But it is, so this is kind of the companion tool to what was the old legacy safety analyst that AASHTO had pre-2018, 19, somewhere in there. So that was the more network screening tool, and this is more the project-based analysis tool. All right, we have a question. Let's see here. So there's a question if I'll post it, if the if it's an iterative process, so you can put in your existing conditions, and I'll show you how to do that, and then you make some design decisions. Say you want to change, I'm going to use freeway examples because that's what John mentioned, but it could be adding lanes to arterials or whatever you want to do. It will help you understand that difference. So if you'll have one project, and that'll be kind of your base conditions or your no build conditions, right? And then you'll make a copy of that, and you'll have your alternative one, and then you'll go into that and document what you're changing, and enter the new configurations, and then you have the 2 reports to compare with side by side of the results and understand how the crashes, how safety performance changed between the 2 alternatives. And hopefully we're moving the needle, at least on fatal and injury crashes. Some decisions some states are making maybe are less reliant on the changes of property damage only crashes. So the IHSDM also, even though this box only draws around freeways, it does include crash modification factors, but it really is focusing on that Part C area. So it has all those safety performance functions from the first edition of the Highway Safety Manual, plus the other site types I kind of mentioned. So just be cautious if they're not calibrated at what the results will be. That's one big step we're doing for the second edition of the Highway Safety Manuals, making everything play nice in the same world. It does allow you to add crash modification factors. So that's either the ones that already exist in Part C, you can change those up. So as I've been mentioning, shoulder lane width, barrier, medium widths, those types of things are already in there. But it also allows you to bring in things from the CMF clearinghouse. Federal Highway has a clearinghouse of all sorts of CMS. It's been researched. I think we're probably approaching 10,000 at this point. Crash modification factors, and so you can go to that website if something isn't included in HSM, just like previous Part D of the Highway Safety Manual. You can go over there, capture some additional information. Say, let's see, for freeways, I don't want to say wider edge lines because George will get mad at me, but that could be one that you could probably pull from the clearinghouse as an example. The nice things that some of the facility types are easier and have a lot more crash modification factors, which will be called adjustment factors in the second edition, already included in there. So it's fewer that you have to go to another location and pull from. Now, as you get down on arterial roads and things, you might go and get the rumble stripe features, or even just changing to like putting up backplates and other features at signalized intersections. So it does that. Calibration factors, so you can bring in local calibration factors, and I can show you how to enter those. I have an example from Minnesota. It's already entered. And then empirical Bayes process. So it will associate your crashes. No, you have to assign your crashes to the sites, almost like ISATI did, but it will help do that EB method calculation for you, but it won't automatically assign crashes based on stationing or mile posting at all. So it's still one manual process that wasn't included as part of any of the enhancements. So once again, it's segments, intersections, interchanges. I think that's been on a couple slides. And then really focusing on what the rural 2-lane, multi-lane, urban arterials, and freeways in the crash prediction modules. So that's the most used features here. And so just like in ISATI and any of these tools, so if you use highway safety software, I think it is from McTrans, they all have these reports, and you all have to kind of figure out how you want to summarize it and present it to your audience in the end. But it gives, I'll walk you through extensive what comes out of IHSDM and discuss how maybe you can combine things if you have different site types to get a total number of crashes or fatal and injury crashes as well. It also gives you a nice pictorial graph. So if you have curves, we'll have a curve on a freeway in the example today. It'll show you where your curves are, and it shows you how crash frequency changes based on that location. Also has a volume change in there, so you can see kind of how the prediction would change as well. So it's pretty nice to see it graphically. It's right up front. Like, it also is kind of my gut check. Did I enter everything correctly? And there's a few of those things in here. One thing with any of these analysis, whether it's this tool or other tools, is documenting how you've entered things in your decisions. IHSDM does the segmentation piece for you, so it's really nice. However, you do have to keep track of that this curve is curve 3 or whatever the nomenclature is, just so you can QC stuff. So for crash predictions for freeway and ramps, so segments including freeway speed change lanes. So that's your merge and diverge areas along the freeway. So it's predicting crashes for the entire freeway segment along those lanes. I thought I silenced everything, but I missed one. And then for your ramps, it'll include ramps, some collector distributor roads, as well as ramp terminals. There's no frontage roads. Texas recently completed a study for frontage roads. That's we're working through that process with them to help understand how to maybe implement that in IHSDM. They also have 12-lane freeways because it's Texas and they have to build more lanes. I think, but they essentially don't have any ramp terminals because all of their ramp terminals are with their frontage roads. So it's a little bit different of an animal down in Texas. So the crash prediction model, like I said, already automatically segments. So if John did what I think he did for ISATI, he walked through how you break up your segments to do this analysis, right? Well, you don't have to worry about that. So if you add curves, if you add ramps, entrance and exits, it does it all for you. And then you'll see in the output how it kind of breaks those segments up based on the change in number of lanes or volumes. And then it will also do that EB analysis, like I mentioned before, for historical crash data. So so what's included? 4, 6, 8, 8, and 10 lanes, just like the highway safety manual. It's not making up new research. It's just using that research that's been compiled into the highway safety manual to implement it in the tool. Faithful implementation is what we like to say. So if it's in the highway safety manual, it's in IHSDM, the first edition. That's kind of where we didn't make up anything new. So It also does the same kind of crash type analysis. So for freeway segments, it's multi-vehicle and single vehicle outcomes for both fatal and injury and PDO. And then for the segments with speed change lanes, it's kind of all crash types, and you're not differentiating between multi-vehicle and single vehicle. It's just how they were developed, and there's fewer crashes in those shorter segments. All right, so for freeway ramps and interchanges, so it's segments, CD roads, and ramp terminals again, and it's kind of the similar things. So your ramp segments and CD roads function similarly, so those are broken down by crash types, and then the ramp terminals are all crash types. So what types of ramps can you analyze? So in the rural and urban context, it's 1 lanes, but you actually get 2 lane options in that urban areas, and that's straight for the highway safety manual. It's nothing different than what's already there. Same thing for CD roads. So 1 lanes in rural areas, and then you get the benefit of 2 lane CD roads in the urban context as well. Now moving to ramp terminals, there's a whole bunch of configurations, and essentially, including roundabouts now, you can analyze any ramp terminal that has some sort of traffic control at the end of it. That is a stop sign or a signal or a roundabout. The free flow off ramps, kind of that to an arterial, is somewhat complex since it's not a systems interchange, but otherwise it's hard not to be one of these types. Oh, there is SPUEs, single point urban interchanges. I don't think diverging diamonds are in there, but SPUEs have been added as well. But again, calibration is important if you're going to use those site types. So for the ramp terminals, here's kind of the traffic control at the end of them. Again, it has to be one of these types to really, it has to have a traffic control feature other than a yield sign to really help the analysis. So rural, you can do 2 lane crossroads, 2 to 4 lanes, and then urban, you get the benefit of the 5th and 6th lanes as their crossroad terminals. You can see kind of the stop controlled scenarios of 2, 3, and 4 there as well. All right. Anybody want to raise your hand and ask a question about what's in the highway safety manual, or what's in IHSDM versus the highway safety manual? Is there something missing that you'd like to see in the highway safety manual and wondering if it's in IHSDM already? John and I both read most of the 2nd edition, the highway safety manual. So if you have questions about it too, we can kind of go over any of that as well. If you see the slide numbers, I'm not going to do 72 slides, just as an FYI either. So this could be quick. In the example today, we're going to build a freeway, as well as we might get into building that interchange. So that's kind of what I have planned. Let's see how far we get. So in part of this demo, I'll show you the engineer's manual. It's kind of handy. I use it at times when I'm traveling and I don't have I'm not toting around my highway safety manual everywhere I go. I know that's a shock to John, but I don't. So sometimes I'll pull up the engineer's manual inside IHSDM to look definitions up. It's pretty handy. If you have issues with it, there's certain systems block the viewing of the text. So if we get in there and you have issues, you can always email me and I'll send you that help documentation. So it has, even though this lists out the engineer's manual just for freeways and ramps, it has everything in there. So it's not really exclusive to just these. The workflow for IHSDM is just like how John probably described iSETI. Everything has a step, and it's a little bit more fluid in IHSDM, I would say, because it will tell you if you missed something, and you can fix it right there. But essentially, there's a tree that we'll walk through, and you'll first create a project, and then inside that project, you'll build out your network, right? So whatever exists, so highways, intersections, interchanges, and you'll add all the same data that you had to add to iSETI, right? There's nothing new or fancy, it's just a different look and feel of the tool. And then the reports will be, should give you the same results. And then you run those evaluations, right? And evaluate the results. So it should be, again, the benefit of IHSDM is that automatic segmentation for freeways, versus iSETI that you have to kind of do all of that outside the application. So what does this look like? It was developed in the early 2000s, so it's not going to be fancy and run as an app on your phone. So don't get your hopes up. But it functions. So up at the top, you'll see there's a menu bar, and that's really where you can choose your user settings, profiles, select projects. And then the navigation tree that has all of your components, pieces, parts of your project. So you can see here there's example project 1 and example freeway. You can do like no build and alternative 1 for a certain aspect. So you can have those separate projects in there and change things up as you go. Down in the operations pane, depending on what you have clicked on, this pane will change and give you different options. So here we're highlighted on project level, so a folder, and so those project operations are in there. So you'll get options to build a new road or an interchange, right? So things in a project, nothing really associated with a road. And then over on the right side is where all the magic happens. It's where you enter data. It's where you view kind of the changes to the application. There's also this little bar down at the bottom that tells you if anything goes wrong. So if it's ever orange, you want to read it. If it's ever red, you want to fix it. It's kind of my rule of thumb for what's in that message box. You'll see how it kind of populates as we go today. So again, here's the projects. So that's the navigation tree, right? Just this zoomed in view of the navigation tree. So there's where your projects kind of live. And then you have your roads. So segments are underneath the project. And then you can associate roads and ramp terminals to interchanges or intersections, right? So we'll walk through the example and kind of show you how this hierarchy works. If you get it wrong, the analysis kind of you can't essentially run an evaluation how you'd want to, or potentially you can't create an intersection, but that usually you can move things around pretty easily. And then if you do any sort of evaluations, they show up underneath an individual element, as well as the interchange could have one as well. So to get data into the tool, there's 2 methods. One is station-based, and this is the one that has the greatest benefit over the other tools. So you enter, even if you're making up your stationing, so you don't have actual project stationing, that's kind of, we have a 1 mile freeway today. Guess what? It goes from 0 to 5,280. We're nuts. We're not very creative here at Federal Highways. But you can just make up your stationing if you have, it also takes milepost or mile log points, depending on whether you're a planner or an engineer. It does that mile increments as well, which I think is what IHSDM mostly does, or what iSETI does. They all start the same, so it messes with my head some days. You can import CAD file stationing. It's a little complicated, and there's a few not a few, there's several cleanup steps that you have to go through. to implement that. But if you're doing a 30-mile stretch of freeway that's kind of curvy, it definitely has its benefits. There's kind of two approaches to this. Is you just import the file and clean it up. The other one is you have two kind of parallel projects and you copy and paste from your import into a project, so you kind of know that you're checking all the boxes as you go through your site list. So it's more precise. I'm not sure what John means by that, but it will allow you to change the alignment within sites. So you can go tweak things, right? Alternatives, pretty quick and easy. The site-based one is really just a spreadsheet. It's just a fancier version. It's the only way you can do roundabouts, for example. There's some other ones that are not, it's very limited that what you can't do with station-based. Most of the stuff you can do station-based. There's a few things that have to be site-based, but otherwise it's just a spreadsheet that looks like a computer application, which I can show you real quick as well. So most people use site-based if they just want one intersection, because if you do station-based, you have to draw two roads and then say where those two roads cross, and then that becomes your intersection. So it's if you really just want a quick and dirty intersection analysis with IHSDM, most people use site-based analysis. So it's nothing special, except instead of doing the way ISAT-E does by segmentation and entering stuff all at once, you'll enter things by elements. So here's an example of horizontal alignment, right? So you're entering all the curve data, regardless of how many lanes exist out there on the roads or what the ADT changes are. You're just adding curve data. And so that's purely separate from that other stuff that forces you to add a new segment, because the tool will create your segments automatically for you, which is the first bullet of the advantage slide. There is this highway viewer. We'll talk a little bit about the hierarchy of where things are in the world and how they adjust based on this priority code that seems abstract and not the highway safety manual. So it's a little difficult to describe without seeing it. You can, and then there you do have all your sites kind of organized in that navigation tree, as I alluded to. And if you enter data for, say, the crash prediction model and it's a 2-lane rural road, you can go do a policy review by adding a few additional elements, data elements. But all that information kind of flows across all the evaluation modules. So if you want to pop over and see what it looks like, it's not too much more to do a policy review versus a crash prediction modeling. Limitations, it's if you're doing so sometimes it feels clunky to build two roads to make an intersection. So there's that kind of element. But if you just really want an intersection, you can just do a site-based and move on with light. So IHSDM does faithfully implement the Highway Safety Manual. It also, in its current release, has more than just what's in the Highway Safety Manual. So it maybe goes a little beyond, trying to anticipate what was coming out in the second edition, which now has been started over 6 or 7 years ago. So by the 10th year, you'll get a second edition. And one of my comments was, I don't want to see this in the text for 10 years. So please remove it, that kind of stuff. Knowing that the refresh cycle is really slow. Here's just another view of that highway editor. You can see on the left, there's what data needs to be entered. So all those elements that you saw in ISAT-E or are included in the Highway Safety Manual are over on the left. And then as you click through them, the pane on the right will change so you can actually enter the data. So there's just kind of a zoomed up version of what's good, bad, and ugly. So the required data elements, if you have them input, you'll get a green check like, hey, you're good. And sometimes that's not accurate. It just has data. So it could be that you have horizontal alignment that just says the entire road's tangent. That's not maybe what your road actually looks like, but you could perform a crash prediction analysis based on that. The question marks are sometimes nice to have, maybe not for your site type. So if you ignore it, it will be assumed that it doesn't exist. So the crash modification factor will be 1. And then anything that's required will give you a nasty red X, and the text will change to red. And those will limit your ability to do a crash analysis. So the evaluation module won't run, and it'll warn you when you get there that, hey, you're missing, in this case, 5 elements, so you barely started. And it will warn you to go back and say, hey, please enter design speed, average ADT, and driveway density. Design speed is a new one that's maybe not in the highway safety manual, so when we get there, I'll explain it. So again, 3 ways to input data. There's a highway editor. You can import it from land XML, and then you can copy from Excel or a spreadsheet or a text file that's tab delimited. So, all right, since most of you do not have the tool on your computer, so that's not the right screen, Derek. That one. All right, everybody can see. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if they see the website? It's probably small. I'll zoom in. So before there was this cute little link. Sweet. All right. Thank you, Arturo. If you keep your hand up, I'm going to make you ask a question. There you go. All right. No questions. All right. So before it used to be this quick little like ihsdn.org, but that doesn't exist anymore because we're government. So I put the link there. I will also add it to the chat. So if you go to this website, it kind of talks about highway safety manual. It also covers they'll see the software download. We'll saw on the slide that there's this IHSDM support that's planned to continue, even though currently there are no plans to enhance this application at the moment. There's no funding, there's no project. We continue to offer it to Ashtoware through kind of new metric. We've also have an alternative of just posting anything that we've developed or was developed with federal state money. We can post it publicly for universities or anybody else to just go grab the source code. So that's kind of our third option of what we can do. So if you go to this download page, there was one other thing over here I want to mention. Let's go here, see if it shows up. So essentially, it is just a zip file. So if we see this file, you'll see it pop up in my downloads. It's just going to be a zip file, and it downloads. And what it gives you in the end is this file structure. If you unzip it, you get all of this. I'm sure. Nope, that doesn't work. So here you'll see the admin tool, you'll see a configuration, and you'll see the actual IHSDM. On one of the last couple releases, they added a 64-bit version of it. And so if you run, so that was for those people that wanted to run really long corridors or analyze a lot of rural 2-lane segments. So if you run, most operating systems run on 64-bit, so I just always open the 64 version. but it doesn't matter. They both do the same thing. They both have access to the same files. All of your stuff will run on both. The 64-bit would just most likely be faster, but you'll see the tutorials are in here, and this has examples. So I think initially they talked about doing some of these chapter 18 and 19 sample projects. So those are in here if you want to show you how to archive those, as well as a lot of these other, there's a roundabout exercise, there's the PA example, this one PA 70, alternative 2A, which I'll open up to show you kind of how complex some of these things can become as well. So there's lots of examples in here. And then the nice thing is within the application, it walks you through kind of how these things roll. So you can see down here, there's tutorials on these different lessons, all included with that download, right? I didn't do anything special. I didn't move anything to this folder. It's all in that one zip file from the website. All right. So the question, do you IHSTM and ISATI require the exactly same inputs? Would FHWA update IHSTM for the second edition of Highway Safety Manual? So they do require the same inputs, but they're entered a little bit different, and you'll see that today. Now, for the second edition of the Highway Safety Manual, there's some discussion of where we're kind of doing a risk assessment of what can change. So like a rural 2-lane and multi-lane models, they're not changing dramatically from the first edition to the second edition. They're just being updated with the models were developed with newer data, and they're calibrated to a common state. And then the problem when we get into urban and suburban is the way we're predicting crashes for pedestrians and bicycles completely changes. So we're a little concerned about not being able to include that as an enhancement. Some of the stuff we can do in the maintenance files. So if we're just changing a coefficient to a model, that we can handle. But when we need to add new models, that adds a super level of complexity. So we most likely won't have everything in there for the second edition for the Highway Safety Manual, unless somebody comes back and says no. Trust me, there's plenty of people saying we need it. Federal Highways just is not in the business of creating software and maintaining it anymore, and so we had to kind of stop this development of this project, and we're actively trying to get somebody to continue it. So it is kind of no more development is planned at the moment, but we do still support it through that IHSTM support email address. So I can copy that into the chat as well. It's got to be on here somewhere. And that goes to Mike Demuta and Hassan. Hassan. That I have to see it to say it. Anyways, they're great guys, super smart. If you have any application technical questions of how to enter things, they're a great resource, and they're on call for this. John and I this is our hobbies, not really, but they're way more available than John or myself would be in the future. But feel free to email us, and we can either answer it if it's a quick question, or you can feel free to email them as well, and they can answer some of those more technical questions about the application, because that's what they're paid to do. John and I have other hobbies we like to get involved in. It's pretty easy to download. Like I said, it doesn't require any IT intervention. One thing that'll show you, depending on the instructions, you might need their help to view that practitioner's guide that's included in the software. So I'm going to take a break. Are there, try to answer the questions that came in, and just curious if anybody wants to raise their hand and ask a question out loud.
No questions have been submitted and there are no hands raised at this time.
It's Friday, it's morning. I get it. You're gonna be quiet. I'm still on my first pot of coffee, if that helps anyone concerned about my health. So I'll crash here this afternoon. No worries. So we're going to take a break and then we'll come back and do kind of roll into the application, and we'll walk through some buttons and stuff before we get into an actual project example. So why don't we just make it easy and come back? Everybody's on East Coast time, right? Should be.
Yes.
Sorry. So we'll just come back at 10 a.m. And we'll take a quick break. Let's go ahead and enter your questions in the question answer pod. Say hi in the chat pod. Get started in about 1 more minute. So welcome back. That felt forever for me. I got water and coffee, so we should be good. So now I'm going to ask the same question I asked at the beginning of the class. How many people have IHSDM downloaded on their machine? So can you raise your hand if you have it on your machine? Ooh, look at this. More people. So we got 2. We got a couple more. At least 2. I think they're raising and lowering them. So thank you. If you want to follow along, I'm going to put the data file eventually into the chat pod once we get going with the actual entering project data. So should be able to see IHSDM. Mine looks a little bit different than the screenshots because I like things to look a little bit more modern. So I'll show you how to kind of customize the look and feel of this application. So like I said, this is your project tree here, the project pane. And if you click on your name, as you click through things, you'll see different things up here in the menu change of what you can do. So if I'm on bookmarks, the economic analysis goes away, my user goes away. If I click on my name, get the user button, but the economic analysis isn't there because I guess I'm not good with money. So they're just not letting me do it. So if I come under user or edit preferences for my user, that's where you can change kind of the look and feel of this application. So you can check and uncheck any of these workflows boxes. So if you want a welcome screen at the beginning, you might have unchecked that. If you want to splash back up to help you start the workflow, you can check this box here. So if the workflow box will come up and help you start right off the bat where you left off. You can change your screen resolution. Here's where I think its default is metal or Windows, but I like Nimbus because it kind of rounds the corners of things and makes it look a little bit more modern. Here's why my screen, you can actually read it. I've changed my text size to as big as they'll make it. So you can, if you're nearsighted like me, you make things smaller. But if you're trying to do demos, you make it 20. So you can kind of change the look and feel of the application. This won't change the reports, but it will change the application itself. Same thing, you kind of go through. The other thing I want to highlight here are these programs. So you can select which file. So one of these aren't highlighted or filled in, you have to go find it, which is maybe not the easiest thing to do. So I'm gonna try to, just gonna copy this. So essentially you go and you click the folder somewhere, there we go. This works. Oh, it's already there. So you just have to navigate through your C program files into accessories. That's where WordPad is for me, right? So you'll have to go navigate. So sometimes it's easier to go back to this window, find it, right? So where in my C drive is this thing? And then go back here and navigate to it. So I can't really help you because if one of these are blank, because it's kind of an individual build and every company is a little bit different, but it tries to find them automatically. Sometimes the Excel and the Adobe Reader are in different places. So those are the two most common ones to not be populated. But I wanted to highlight where you can fix that if you get into here. Yeah, everything else, I mean, you can do a lot of customization with your reports, with the graph settings. So what does the outputs look like? You can have messages, so you can change the color of your messages. So if you're not really keen on this combination, then you can change it up. So there's lots of customizations you can do if you really care to. I just changed my look and feel and my text size for this. So as I said, you can, inside this tree, you'll have a project. So this is the 1 mile freeway, which we're going to walk through and build today. It has a segment, it has 2 segments actually, and an interchange. And inside the interchange, it has ramps and a ramp terminal. So if I click on the 1 mile freeway, you'll see how this bottom pane kind of changes. If I click on interchanges, it changes to something different. So depending on what you have selected in the tree, I'm going to turn off my camera because now I'm annoyed that I'm not looking at the screen. As you click on different elements, you'll get different selections down below. So here in an interchange, you can add a new highway, an intersection, a ramp terminal, or a roundabout. But if I'm up on my main folder, I'm adding a highway, an intersection, or an interchange. So within the interchange, I can't add an interchange, kind of makes sense. So little things like that will help you kind of navigate it. One cool benefit, and we'll see how this changes today, this is a nice QC method, but compared to ISAT E, you can click this view highways. So right now I'm selected on the freeway, and you can click this view highway button. And it actually shows you kind of a crude schematic of what you've entered. So if you can zoom in, you can actually move these labels around to help kind of guide what things are if you want to take a screenshot of it later. And then say here, we'll walk through this example, but you can click on it, and wherever this triangle lands, you can come over here to this cross section, and you actually see a cross section view of what's happening. Looks like our shoulders are sloped the wrong way on the outside. Normally we don't drain into the the freeway, but that doesn't really impact your crash analysis. But as I hover across this, you'll see the bar at the bottom change. So you'll see the shoulder, and it tells you that it's the inside shoulder, how wide it is, and the slope of that shoulder, right? Same thing. Here's the left side. There are 3 lanes in this piece of pavement, and it's 36 feet wide with a cross slope of 2%. So just kind of, this is how I like to do my QCs, because it's kind of a quick and dirty. Do I have shoulders everywhere? Is my shoulder sloping up or down? That's kind of scary, right? I'm gonna walk through how that gets entered. So there's lots of ways, just like before, if you want to edit this, you can double click it and it'll bring up that editor window to enter your data. So this is where we'll go through and we'll enter some horizontal alignment, some vertical. We could, but it doesn't do anything for crash prediction. The number of lanes. So this is where all that data elements. So it's completely different than the way I said E was, doing element by element. But it's still the same information that you had to produce for the other application, and it's purely based on what's required for the highway safety manual. So it's just, if it's design, the definition in the highway safety manual is the definition here. And one quick way to figure this out is the other thing, you can access the help no matter where you are. But if we go to the browser, you'll see we talked about this engineer's manual, and here's kind of everything. So if you come into the crash prediction, and I can't make this bigger, I'm sorry, you can see that your data input requirements are here, and it has a similar look and feel to the highway safety manual. So it tells you, so for this, the rural 2-lane modules, it has some site types maybe you haven't seen before. So it has the 3 stop controlled, a 3-leg stop controlled intersection with the turning movement. And so that's one of the new site types that came out of research that has been added to the 2nd edition. There is an all-way stop control that's in here, as well as this 3-leg signalized intersection. So there's 3 site types in IHSDM that are currently not in the highway safety manual, and we just want to make sure that those are calibrated if you start to do comparisons. So the question came in of how come vertical alignment isn't considered. It's considered in some of those other modules. So the policy review module, it's for intersection site distance to be there. However, in crash prediction modeling, the highway safety manual has nothing to do with grade. So it's an unfortunate fact, but ultimately it's not in the highway safety manual. It's not used in any, I'm trying to think if there's a state crash prediction model, and John might know this, that includes grade, but I'm not sure I've ever seen one that includes grade.
I have neither.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a hard data element for people to have on hand for states. So it just hasn't been used as part of the modeling process. Thanks, John. So again, this is pretty much the highway safety manual. So if you don't own a copy, this is the 1st edition. It tells you pretty much all the same equations, same definitions, same introduction, minus that. But yeah, it's pretty much the highway safety manual. If you get in here, sorry, I'm doing hand motions, my camera's off now. If you get in here and you don't see anything on the right hand side, let me know, or email that ihsdn.support@dot.gov. And there is a quick fix for it, and that would be the piece that you may or may not need IT's help with. Most people can do it by themselves, but there's been a couple that had issues. So, but this is my I'm traveling highway safety manual. All right. Anybody, this is pretty much the nuts and bolts of the application. I can talk about the admin tool kind of after we build the interchange and we do an evaluation. It'll make maybe a little bit more sense of what the things are. But does anybody have any questions, or we'll start into this example? All right. No hands, no questions. Okay, Friday morning. All right, so I'm gonna kind of close down this one I've already done. I'm gonna click on my name. So again, if I want a new project, so either it's a no build or it's a alternative to one design, and I can show you how to kind of archive and unarchive and start a new project for a second design alternative. you click on your name, and that's where you start. You get project, right? So we're gonna start. This is not creative, but it's a 1 mile freeway. And I hate this default because the default, if you hit enter, is cancel. So just make sure you hit OK. Otherwise, you can type in, this is right. You can, if you really wanted to, you can make it metric. You can add a different comment than the date it was created. And then you hit OK, and then you get a folder in your project tree, right? And so now you see under this folder, some of these options are grayed out. So remember how I said that there were 2 methods to enter data? If you just want to do a quick and dirty intersection, you can do this new site set. And if I click that, you'll say, I'll just say intersection reverse type, and then go next and finish. And so in here, I think we're doing urban. You see all the site types that are part of IHSDM. And so if we're in the rural ones, might be a little bit shorter list. We'll do rural for a second. So here's well, I guess we should do freeways because that's what John told me to do. Okay, so freeways. So you can enter just like iSETI. If you get in here, you can click on a freeway segment. You can add and edit a site. And then Lordy Majority, this is a lot of columns, right? So this was similar to iSETI, but turned, I believe. However, there's one nice thing is you can also do it this way. So it kind of rotates those columns, and it allows you to enter the data manually. If you hover, it kind of gives you a definition of what that means. And also, so that's wherever that question mark exists, you'll get kind of the more definitions. And this is kind of how you make a freeway segment if you were not doing a station-based analysis. So pretty much exactly like iSETI, but a little bit more one at a time versus, so I think in there you can go through and do number of lanes for every site, every segment together, and then kind of work through the elements. There is a question. So so the question of where the site types that aren't in the first edition of the Highway Safety Manual, where did they come from? They mainly came from 3 different projects. So the Always Stop would have come from the 1768, you're correct. And the 1-lane roads and arterials that are 6 lanes or greater would have came from 1762. And the roundabout project was 1770. There may or may not be one or more from another. I think like 1772 might have had a couple, but most of them came from 62 and 68. So that's in the roundabout one, which is 70. So they've pretty much taken those models as they were documented in the research report and added them here. And so they're not calibrated. And yep, so if you want to know those definitions, it's best to kind of go back to that original report to look at. So roundabouts are what? 888, I think. I'm not sure what the N1768 report number is. Cool. So yeah, this is pretty much a spreadsheet. It's just a fancy spreadsheet. So I'm going to close and close, and I'm going to discard because it reminded me. I'm going to delete that. So you're gonna not, like, you can't undo this. Some of your decisions are not, you can't go back. So this is one of them, is deleting things will kind of ruin your life. All right. So we're going to get started here. We're going to do a new highway, right? We got to build our road first. So I'm going to click on new highway, and just because we're still not creative, it's got 1 mile freeway. Again, you can change it, add a comment, add a description of the project. So this sometimes helps with that alternative process. The description box, it also will help you understand maybe your designs changes. So if you have 11-foot lanes versus 12-foot lanes, maybe you document that here, just so it's a quick way to know what's changed from your no builder base conditions. Then there's cross slopes. We pretty much just leave default because it's not used to predict. Station equations, hopefully these aren't used too often. People are evil if they make you use them. So we're just going to skip that box because that was a nightmare back in my early career. So this is station based. So you can see stations in feet. And so we're going to do a 1 mile freeway from 0 to 5,280. Creative. You do kind of get to change the angle of the road if you want to. So we're headed east to west. So it's pretty much that. And then this is a weird number, and we're not sure why it's in the tutorial. It's 656.17 is the elevation, and that's the same for all of these elements. It could be 0, doesn't really matter. Again, it doesn't take that into account for the crash prediction module. Oh, that one's supposed to be 0. And the next one's 656.17. There we go. So I'm providing the elevation at station 00 plus 00, right? All right. Now you'll see some of the similar questions just in a different form and function that ICID had. These are just basic highway safety manual questions. One thing I didn't show you in the other one, you can always adjust any of these boxes just by clicking on it. You'll see the headers. You can also sort if you want to by any of these by clicking on it. Or if you get that double arrow, just click and hold and drag it. So our area type is urban. So we're going to click urban. And the alignment is one way. Nope, it's divided multi-lane. Sorry, that's the ramp. Okay, so a freeway is a divided multi-lane road in essence. Don't get worried about that just quite yet. So you have undivided 2 lanes, undivided multi-lane, undivided or divided multi-lane in one direction. So we're going to click OK. So sometimes the default view is like that, like, well, what did I put? Is it divided or undivided? And so you kind of have to drag that guy out. And it remembers these things. That's why I'm playing around with them. So for functional class, this is where we're going to make sure it knows it's a freeway. So you can say freeway here. So now it's a freeway that's divided into multi-lane. So it kind of makes more sense, right? And then for the stuff, the widths, the kind of default widths for the freeway, and you can change any and all of these, and you'll see us do this for the when we add a lane to the freeway in this example. So the nominal through lane transition, there's no transition. The median width is 30, and there's no transition for the median. Now this is a freeway, so we hope that the median isn't being transversed. But so we're going to say non-transversable, even though there's no median barrier in this example. And that's it. So you can double check, make sure you've got all this stuff entered. It'll warn you if you don't. Here, click. So one more time, kind of tells you if you did everything right. The evaluation will pop up, and I'm just going to click cancel for now. But you see down here, let me click cancel. Down here, I got a warning message in my kind of information bar. So this is the history of everything I did, right? So I created an intersection. I didn't save my intersection. So, and I deleted my intersection. And then I created my 1 mile freeway. And then it started the evaluation 1 and I deleted evaluation 1. So it kind of is that rolling history of what's been done throughout the project since you've opened the application for this instance. So it's a good kind of, did I update that? Sometimes you can get reminders out of this, but like I said, there's the warning messages that appear down here in orange for me. There. So now we have our freeway. It's really rough. We only really told it was a freeway, right? So we're going to edit the highway to enter that data. So here's where I'm going to go get, oh, I have something on top of it. 1 second. So if you're following along, I'm going to put this file in the chat pod, hopefully. No big deal if I can't, because life, sometimes I don't have access to these things. Oh, and it doesn't look like it. It's fine. Well, we'll share that after the class. I'm just going to have some data that I'm copying from an Excel sheet to populate this. So I'm going to start with the horizontal alignment data. So right now, if I come down here and I view my highway, it's just this fancy straight line, right? And it's like, well, we don't really build roads like that. There's a couple trees or houses that's blowing through. So we might want to add some curves. So we're going to first start with this horizontal alignment. So there's a lot of ways you can edit this. Again, the headers, you can drag them around so you can see stuff better. So the first way is you can just like directly edit in this table. So if I want to make this 0 to 1,000 feet, I can do that. I can change it to a curve right here. I can edit this record directly. You can also click edit here and it'll pop up an editor box that you can change stuff in. So if I want to go and add something from scratch, you can click add and you'll get that pop-up window and it'll kind of be defaulted out until you select your element type. So now we're going to add a curve and it already knows right now that I've entered information from 0 to 1,000. It's like, hey, what's after 1,000? It wants to know. So up to 2,000 feet, there is a curve that's 1,500 foot radius. The curve direction is left, so it's left-hand turn. And it's on both road beds. So we know sometimes the curves don't always match up on a divided freeway. Sometimes one goes off around a mountain. But essentially for this example, it's the same. And you'll click add. And then you can click close and you can see stuff was entered, right? The other way you can do it, and this is kind of quick and dirty method, is you can have it all in Excel. So I have these 2 lines already entered. So I'm just going to copy these last 4 to kind of complete our road profile. And there's lots of ways to paste this. You can right click up here on add and paste. You can click on this last row and paste. But you can't like click in a blank area. So if there's nothing in the table, you can't really paste it down here. So I'm going to click paste. And in a second, magic will happen. Let's see how my computer is playing nice today. Wow. Okay, that's not supposed to take that long. Now I'm scared. John, take over. No, it'll be okay. It usually takes like 3 seconds. So this scares me. All right. So everything I copied and paste came in. So below those first 2 lines that enter manually, it should look like this. So you can go through and separately have your plans and pull out all your horizontal alignment data, enter it into this Excel, and then copy and paste it directly in here. So if you want to, you can validate the elements. And this really just says what it's used for. And it tells you that nothing's incomplete or invalid for horizontal alignment. So it's really just this last line that tells you if you're missing something. So get rid of that. There we go. So this is an instance where the validation helps. Like, oh, I forgot to enter a curve radius for a segment where I said there was a curve. It's not super helpful. It does tell you element 6, there's no value. I guess it is. It tells you exactly what's there. It's just kind of a little bit formatting. But so if I go back, like, oh yeah, I accidentally deleted that. It's 1,000 feet. And then you're good, right? So now if I click validate again, hopefully it says all 6 elements are good, and you're set. So this is a weird feature in IHSDM that I'm not sure the origination of it, but for the most part, you'll always want to do update and save same version. We do not recommend you save a new version for alternatives analysis because it gets really depending on what you're doing, it can get really complex to know what version, and you have to go in and change every version in a project to get it to do an analysis. So we always recommend archive that project and then bring it back in as a separate project and make it alternative 1, right? So we pretty much just always use update and same version. It's the version of saving saving your work. That's all it's doing. You can do it multiple times, it's fine. And then if you want to close this window, you just click close. And now if I go to the highway viewer, I have curves, right? We did stuff. Always a bonus. So this is where you can come in and you can say, okay, I now have it's right now it's saying 2 lanes, 30-foot median, which I told it there's no shoulders, so we're kind of still missing some elements. So if I still clicked on the 1 mile freeway, you can come back and do that edit highway. And so we're going to next go into the lanes. So here it defaulted to kind of 2 lanes in each direction. Well, that's not accurate at all. With this project, so I'm going to click delete. This project is going to start out with 3 lanes. It's going to widen out to 4 lanes, and it's going to narrow back down to 3. So that's so it's widening out for, if we get to it, that interchange elements. Hopefully we get into that a little bit, but it's widening out to 4 lanes in the interchange area, and then it's tapering back down to 3 lanes once it gets past that interchange area. But you can also see here, it's just a question mark, which if I do this, it's going to warn me that I don't have the number of lanes, right? So it does a little bit of validation check too. If you've deleted something that was complete, but it's no longer complete. So back in that Excel file, I have my lane data. And I'm just going to copy and paste it. And well, we'll do it that way. So here, again, there's no rows down here, so I can't right click and paste anything. So I have to come up to this add and paste, and see, it's supposed to be that fast. I don't know what happened in the other task, sorry. So essentially we have our 3 lanes up to 2000, and then we have 4 lanes up to between 2000 and 4000, and then it tapered back down to 3 lanes. But what happened in these middle lanes is we've narrowed the lanes. This is the one thing that's not in this highway safety manual, is this priority. So I do want to touch on it. It is literally has nothing to do with crash prediction. All it's doing, let me do my file and update. All it's doing is when I view my highway, it's telling you for this lane, it is the closest lane to the center line, right? So that is this guy. This is the closest lane to my center lane, or my center line. So it is 10, and it's a random number. You will you essentially want to leave space between each of the numbers, although in between the lanes it could be 10, 11, 12, because you're really not going to add a lane in the middle or a shoulder in the middle of your freeway. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So for your lanes, it's just telling that how far to draw them away from that center line. So if I go back to this guy, so this is lane 1, and that was 10. This is lane 2, that's 20. This is lane 3, and that's 30. And you can still see if I click this, I do my cross section. There's still no shoulders, right? But if I hover now, it says right now it's 3 lanes, and the median is still 30 feet. If I go back to my plan view and I click in that middle section where we've added the 4th lane, it doesn't look pretty right now. If I hover again, now it says 40, 4 lanes with 44 feet. The median is still 30 feet. So it's just a quick QC thing that I like to do. You always have to do this file and update, and you always have to close and reopen the highway viewer for it to make any changes that you've just done. So just as a cautionary tale. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to Q&A pod or raise your hands, and we'll make sure we just answer your questions as we go through this. So I'll just click on median real quickly. It's not really changing. We're just going to keep it non-transversable with 30 feet. You can still get that edit and pop up. I should. So you can edit it here. I know we entered this information when we created our highway, but you can change it down the road, right? Same thing for lanes. There's this edit feature. It's pretty much the same. You can't have the lanes be different widths on the different sides of the roads, although it's probably just going to average out that width. Right. So we're going to move to shoulders now, and then we'll go back to the viewer and see what happens. So I'm going to click on shoulders section. We're going to add this one manually to start. So for the inside shoulder, we're not going to change the width of the inside shoulder at all. It's going to be the same for both sides of the road, and it's going to be the inside. So here's where, I don't know why they have 4%, and it's going to be 8 feet the entire way. The material is paved. There are no rumble strips. So for rumble strips, if I resize this box, you'll see my rumble strips kind of move over. So if your box is, it's just this check boxes, kind of alignment's a little off. But here's the example of priority. So the inside shoulder is closer to the center line than the inside lane is, right? So my priority is going to be 5. So it draws in the correct space. So if I hit add and then close, come back up here and do update same version. And click on my freeway again. Now I zoom in. You can see there's a little bit different gray color. And if I click and view the cross section, I can see my shoulders now sloping down to the median. So 2% on the pavement, but then a 4% that's paved here, and then their median still 30 feet. All right, close. We'll keep going. So the outside shoulder does vary. So I'm going to go copy that here. So because we're just trying to use the same pavement width that we already have out there, we're going to see what this looks like. We're going to narrow the outside shoulder when we added a lane. So I'm going to come in here. Again, you can right click on the line that exists. That seemed to take a minute, so I'm going to paste up here. And today it likes me to paste up here. Again, any of these things you can come and edit directly in these rows for anything you want. And so now, again, the priority, so our lanes, if I, let me just save this real quick. Our lanes go 1 to 40, right? So in the 4-lane section, we have 10, 20, 30, and 40. So the shoulders, that priority for the outside, they just left them all 50. So 50 is greater than 30 and 40. So it will just draw in the right place. That's all that number is doing. You can see here goes the same segments as our lane. So 20 or 2,000, 2,000 to 4,000, 4,000 to the end of the mile, right? So that's that guy. Just one more time, just for funsies. Double check. Paved. All right. So now if I come back down to my highway, view my highway, you kind of get the gist of how I build out my model. I do it kind of, did I do this element right? So now, there, that is sloping backwards. So that's the guy. So I'm going to come back to the Excel file. I'm going to make these -4. I think that works. So now I got to come in here and delete. Okay. And paste over here. I usually paste on the line, so that's really throwing me off. So file, update. And honestly, the slope doesn't matter for crash prediction, so it's not that big of a deal, but it just drives me nuts. All right, let's see if we get the cross slope right. Yay, there we go. So we're going to drain the water off the road. Well, makes a little bit more sense. So here you can see the outside shoulder is 12 feet. The pavement width is 36 feet for the travel lanes with 3 lanes. And then inside shoulder is 8 with a 30-foot median. Now, if I go over to our 4-lane section, you can see how it doesn't line up. There's no transition, but that's kind of crash prediction at its finest. You can see now there's 4 lanes here. The outside shoulder is narrowed. The inside shoulder is still 8 feet, and the median is 30 feet. So just kind of my way of QCing my work as I go. So finally, the last red X we have is our ADTs. So in here, you can add as many years as you want. You can also do that sort like I did by accident. So this one has 2 different ADTs because of the 8 interchange that's going to magically appear inside the segment. So from 0 to 2,000, it's 35,000 vehicles. And then from the 20,000, the end, 2,000 to the end. Same year, it is going to be 40,000. So we increased it a little bit, right? And again, you can click this validate and it will say that everything's there. I make this guy 0. It's not happy. There's a stop sign there. If I click validate, I assume it's telling me it's missing, right? If I come up here and try to update, it's going to yell at me and tell me it's missing. There's lots of there's lots of things that'll tell you, hey, you didn't quite fill this out right. So now if I hit validate, get that, seems happy. Also, update version lets me save my work. So that's pretty much all you need for crash prediction. We haven't added any ramps, so there's no ramp connection, no weaving, there's no barrier in our segment. They're either at median or outside. You can see how it's pretty easy to add if there was. You just kind of say where it starts, what side of the road it's on, and make this box a little bit bigger. It's a long text. All right, nope, just doesn't make it all the way. So if you hover, it tells you, and the offset barrier for the outside travel way. I think it's, and it's also in feet. But that's it for how you build a freeway. And once again, click here, view our highway. Not much has changed since we last looked at it. It was just ADTs. So now that we have a road, we can evaluate it, right? So I'm going to close this guy and you'll see the screen. So right now I can't do any evaluation. So I have to close my highway viewer and the evaluation will be activated. So once again, 1 mile freeways. And one thing with IHSDM is you can change. So if you build out your project bigger than you need, or you just want to, if you have the entire segment of a freeway for your state and you just want one piece of it analyzed and results to do kind of an alternatives analysis, you can limit your stationing for just that one piece of that mile point within that segment. Here it's just tells you what your bounds are and the analysis that you're going to perform. We've only provided crash prediction stuff. Also, freeways is only available in crash prediction, so a lot of this stuff is grayed out. But here you could do that policy review, design review, that kind of stuff for your rural areas. This is our big bad warning for all those site types that weren't in the first edition of the Highway Safety Manual. So, oh yeah, I thought there was 1772 was listed here. So here it does tell you all of the research that was used. So here's 1770. The 6-lane plus come from 58. Oh, yeah, 62 was crash type by severity. All right, here's the other ones that came from 68. It reminds you about calibration and the importance of calibrating. And then 1770 is for the roundabouts. So we're doing a freeway segment. It's in the first edition, so we're just gonna move on, right? For this example, we're just gonna do 1 year. You can do multiple years, but essentially, if you just want 1 year analysis, we've only provided it one ADT, so it's only going to give us one, like the same result for the same year for multiple years anyways, because it can't grow the ADT at all. So it's easy. If it's crashes per year, it's the same as the other number. We haven't provided any crash data, so we're not going to do EB at all. So if you click next, then you get kind of this next level of warning, right? So one more time, we're going to check to make sure you've given it everything it needs to actually be able to run its evaluation. There's no warnings. Here again, you get that same screen. So if I want to change my shoulder, if I had something screwed up, or missing, I'd have access to it right here to go in and change it. It doesn't give you the option to do number of lanes here because it won't let you save your project if you don't have lanes, right? So there's certain ones that are missing, but there are definitely ones here you can kind of QC and edit. So here's just kind of a summary of we're analyzing it from 0 to a mile. There's no EV the first year, last year. It's using AASHTO. Oh, should have highlighted. Let me go back one step. So here, I can show you this after we finish this evaluation. Here you can add in local calibration. So you've created local calibration factors. You just have to select them from this drop-down list. Same thing with crash distribution and model coefficients or crash modification factors. So if you change any of these in the admin tool, here's how you select it to kind of apply it to your site. And I'll show you that here in a second, or maybe after a break. But all right, so we're gonna let this thing fly and see what the results look like. So here, this screen looks the same as this screen. So even if you let it go and you close this window, it's still in that history, right? It's still in your what I've done today history. I like to use Firefox for this because that way it doesn't mess up any of my other internet browsers. So this is the same report as a PDF report. There's also a few Excel files that you can get out that maybe would have different details. But essentially, this is what the report looks like. You can click anything over here. If you want to jump to a section that you know, like I know I really like this this table, so I'm just going to click it, and this is my high-level summary table of what's happening. But we'll walk through this. So that's the one I click every time. So just like any other government entity, there's a disclaimer, a notice, and warnings, and whatever else we can come up with a name that's not just saying use this on your own at your own risk. Once again, it just summarizes everything in that last screen of what you used. So it kind of carries that information through. It also repeats that warning about site types not in the first edition. And then here it provides kind of a quick summary of this section and what the calibration vectors were, what the model category is. So it's a freeway segment and it's divided multi-lane, right? So here's that, and this is hard to see, I realize. So I can't, it's not live text over here, so I can't quite make it bigger. But here's where you can see if there was an intersection on the freeway, that would be probably bad. But we know we have curves, right? So degree of curvature, hey, there's a left-hand curve, then we go tangent, then we go a right-hand curve, tangent for another while, and then a left-hand curve. So our curves are showing up. Here's the radiuses should match that. It's hard to see what the actual measurement is. But here you can see crashes by segment. And so you can see it's more. Here's where we added volume. Even though the curve ended, we've added volume. And then here's where we've taken away a lane. And then the same thing, here's the curvature, crashes by curves. So it looks almost the same as the crashes by segment, but it does change a little bit here at the end. All right. Zoom back out so you can actually, it's not like thrown in your face. So here's just a quick summary of what's been included in this segment analysis. So it's segmented 3 segments, right? We didn't tell it there were 3 segments. We didn't go make 3 different elements. We gave it that this segment had 3 lanes and this segment had 4, and then it went back to 3. So we kind of told it that, but it segmented that out by itself. We didn't go in and separate out our curves based on where the ADT changed and any of that stuff. So all that's just tapping behind the scenes. So this is that table 2 that I really like, because it just gives you a super summary of everything for all the 3 segments above. Here's what's happening. So tells you the analysis, the length, and the average future ADT for this project. So crashes are 10.76, fatal and injuries make up about 40% of that, and then PDOs are about 60%, right? See, percentages, math. It gives you a whole bunch of other measures if you want to report things in rates per mile per year. It's a 1 mile segment, it's a 1 year. So guess what? They're the identical numbers, right? So these shouldn't be surprises. If you want to do it by total travel, so million vehicle miles traveled, you can see that rate here. So total crash rate, and then fatal and injury crash rate is here, and PDO is here. So table 3 is very similar to what looks like table 1, but it's actually the crash prediction results. So here it tells you segment 1, 2, 3 are the same segments 1, 2, and 3 from up here. But it gives you the effective length, and that will change if you have a freeway, a speed change lane with your freeway. But it also then tells you predicted crashes along the segment. So we know that we added lanes here. We also added volume. So it looks like the length, even though it's the same as this one, the increased volume and the lane change almost doubled the number of predicted crashes on that middle segment, right? Same length, ADT went up and the number of lanes changed. And then it just keeps going. So kind of gives you choose your result value. But essentially this is your predicted crashes by the segment table that's included in segment 1. Then if you want to look at it a little bit differently, there's crashes by alignment. So here it's breaking out the crashes by alignment. So if you want to look at the crashes associated with the first curve, here's that table. Second, third, as well as the tangents. Here's just another total crashes, which isn't much different than the one above. And then finally, the last 2 tables are using the crash distributions. So hopefully John discussed those a little bit. So there's either a crash distribution that's a table, so a crash type, severity type kind of breakdown for this facility, or there's a severity distribution function that looks a lot like a safety performance function or a crash prediction model. So for freeways, it's a severity distribution function. And so that's how these guys are calculated. So for our injury crashes, they're divvied up based on that calculation. So you can get an estimated number of fatal and suspected serious injuries, B's, C's, and O's. So PDOs here, so no injury. The distribution by crash type can also be adjusted. So here for freeways, this kind of breaks down where the most crashes are occurring. So clearly these numbers should look similar to above because total highway segment crashes are, we've only added segments, right? There's no intersections. But you can see single vehicle, you can see multi-vehicle, you can also see fixed objects. There's no parked cars with a freeway. I guess it could be, but and that's kind of the summary. So this is, when you get here, it has a lot of numbers, a lot of different ways to analyze. Like if I look at this table 2, there's still a crash rate, there's two different crash rates. There's per mile per year, there's or per million vehicle miles traveled, or you can just look at the pure frequency, which is depending on how you need to report for your state or locality, right? So you don't need to ever use all of these numbers usually. You'll pull out the nuggets of good information to kind of make comparisons between your project elements. So with that, I'm going to pause for questions and raise your hands. Feel free to interact. You've hopefully had enough coffee by now. It's 11 a.m. Any questions?
There are no questions in the Q&A pod, nor any hands raised at this time.
I love Friday trainings. Hopefully these values should be similar to ISAT-E, right? So you're getting some of those same results that the other tools allude to. Some of the labeling, it's all the same calculations. It's just how it's done and how you enter data can change between these applications. So if you've ever tried to use the Trans software, it's completely different than this. Not completely. The elements are still the same, but just how you enter the data looks a little bit different as well. One other report that you can get to is a CMF report. And this still has the same summary up at the top, but it tells you for my horizontal curve 1, my multi-vehicle fatal and injury value is 1.25 for site 1 and 1.34 for site 3. So I guess for CMF number. So sorry. So that's the CMF for that. You can see the multi-vehicle PDOs right below that. And single vehicle FI, single vehicle PDO, right? So that's the results of adding curves to our freeway. We expect for curves, crashes goes up, and these are those calculated from the radiuses you provided to the application. So you can go through this. This usually goes on and on and on. You can see there's a lot of ones. We didn't give it any median barrier. There's no high volume. There's no lane change. We do have some implications of the outside shoulders, right? They're wider for the segments with 3 lanes. So those are less than 1. Not sure outside clearance since I didn't add barriers, but anyways, then 8F. So it just keeps going, right? Anyway, so this is where you can see those detailed calculations behind the scenes that I think are a little bit harder to get out of ISAT-E. Let's try to be a little bit more transparent. So with that, we'll take about an 8-minute break. So we'll come back at 11:10, and then we'll start to add an interchange. Sound good? If you have questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A pod or in the chat pod or raise your hand, and I'll be around. I don't think I need to go get more coffee at the moment. So we'll be back at 11:10. Welcome back. Welcome back. So any burning questions that you had? I don't think we've lost anybody, so that's solid. You're all still there, so that makes me happy. So one thing I did mention in this crash prediction, if you get back there, if you want to add a calibration factor, a specific crash distribution, or the CMF, I want to show you how to do that before we get any farther. So you do have to exit the main application, and then in the root directory of IHSDM, there is the admin tool. Again, doesn't matter which one you pick, just open up one of them. Is that the woodpecker? I don't think it's the woodpecker. All right. Here, sorry about the font, the size. But oh yeah, it is a woodpecker. He's on the side of my house. I usually throw things at him. Anyways, you can see here's the calibration data set. So there's always this HSM one. It's the default. And just like the other application, you can move around the columns. One second. All right. So here there's no crash distribution. It's just the default one from the highway safety manual. So if I want to add a calibration, you can click copy the default one, or you can copy this one. You can't, there's no like add button. So you always have to copy one to be able to edit. So you can edit it, this one. It won't let you save. There's no like save button if you try to edit the default one. So you always have to copy the HSM one to get one to edit. So this one, hey, there's an OK button. So for this example, it was a multi-lane rural site, and it was the 4-lane divided. So it can be used, the IHSDM can be used to create a calibration factor. You can click manually enter it, and that's what was done here. So it was calculated outside of the application. If you provided data, so site data, including crash history, then you can actually calculate a calibration factor right here in the application. So it's a little bit, if it needs to be done, it needs to be done somewhere. Whether you use this application or not, it's all the same data to do the calibration. It's just whether you do a calculation outside the application or here or with researchers. And then, yeah, you can also just, if you calculate outside the application, just create it here. Same thing. Yes, button if you'd like to close the window and discard the data. Yes. It's always a distracting which one's which. Here's what a crash distribution looks like. It's kind of still the same. So if I go back to the same one, this is rural multi-lane crash distributions for undivided, divided. You can see shoulder width related, nighttime. Not sure why those are there. Here's the one for undivided, and it looks more like crash types, right? Sorry. So head-on, side swiper, and angle. And then you have them both for fatal injury. And then for this rural multi-lane, you remember from 13 years ago when the highway safety manual came out, the rural model has the KABC as well as the KABCO. So that's why this one's a little bit different. So if I go back in here and I go to urban, you'll see these are a little bit different. You have multi-lane segments and multi-vehicle for driveways, non-driveways. You have your single vehicle ones. But if I look at the severity, you only have fatal and injury and PDO, right? Because that's all that was included with the first edition. So you can see the site types. You can also, one other thing, you can drag these columns to change the order. So if you want to sort it by segment type and have that be your first column, you can I just clicked and held it, and it remembers that. I don't know how, but if I click at it, oh, I gotta get back there. Whichever one it was. Oh well. Anyways, final thing, just if you've done your HSM configuration, So if you develop safety performance functions and all you're doing is changing your SPF intercepts and your A's and B's, your coefficients, right? You can change them right here. Here's where you can see the model form is changed a little bit for, so there's this bonus one of E for the three-legged turning intersection where the major road turns. So if I click on that, no, it doesn't tell you where E goes up here in the equation, but it exists and they added the data. You can change the default CMFs here if that's really what you want to do and you develop CMFs for your safety performance functions directly. But it's most people have not done that. And then finally, the economic data. This is what it was back in 2021, and this does not get updated. So if the state uses, usually what happens is the state has their own values for these, and this is used for that any EPDO calculation, equivalent property damage only calculation, or in the cost benefit analysis. So if your state has things that changes, this is where you would do a copy, right? And then you're actually able to edit this value, right? So if it's 3 million, see if I got the right amount of zeros. Yep, you can just edit it right there and it will, you can hit OK and it would save it. I'm gonna click cancel and not save because I don't, the example I use this one. Here's, you can see what policies that policy review guide would be using. If you're using the traffic and analysis configuration, again, it's kind of old. So this is from 2007. And then you can see the Green Book is the 2011 edition was the last thing added. This vehicle stuff, we don't recommend you really using it. So we just ignore that middle section. But so here's where we kind of make like Florida specific things. Some states have made their own calibrate these data sets available to you. So if you work in other states, I'm not sure, I don't think Florida has posted any of theirs inside this tool. So yeah, the economic data doesn't really ever get updated anymore because it'd be a software release. We'll see if they do try to make a different or try to add some of these features for the second edition Highway Safety Manual. We'll see if they update those economic costs as well. But all right, there was a question about adding a CMF to analysis. Let me get back into the tool. Not debug, just the regular one. So here's my freeway. I have my evaluation. If I double click him, you can see in that same place we added the horizontal and the number of lanes. Down here is this user defined CMF. So if you want to go over to the CMF clearinghouse and pull something magic out of the hat of the clearinghouse, here's how you would add it. So you'll come in. So this is freeways. So this looks different depending on what your site type is. So you'll have total, fatal injury, and PDO as your severity options. So I'm just gonna do a little wider because that's the example I can think of. Again, this is only my text size is as big as it gets, so sorry that it cuts things off. And say we only want it from that middle segment, just for funsies. And the start year is 2021. Because that's what the analysis would be. And it can be for total, and we'll just say 0.88 for fun. I can't remember what that one is. I don't think it's that high, but anyways, that's somewhat dramatic. And that's how you'd enter the CMF for wherever you put it. You can have one for fatal and one for PDO separately. You want to clearly document this, so you know what's been done. And if I update and close, and if I come back and run a new evaluation on it, do next, acknowledged, one, next, run. This is where I get scared when we start answering questions live, but it's all right. And I come to my, you'll see there's this new table that's added to the report. Here's wider edge lines, tells you the locations, and tells you the CMAP value. It changed this slightly, I believe, a little bit lower. I come back, you can click on this. You can do show report. You can right click up here and do show report, and we'll do HTML. And it's, I always get this confused when I have to go back into this to do single page. So now I'm going to put the original one on the left. Maybe. There we go. And the new one on the right. Yep. So now we can see the results are different. Same ADTs, same effective length, but the crashes went down because of that CMAP. I'm going to delete that. And no. And then if you, that didn't work out or wasn't good enough, you can just go back and delete it and then save it. That might be a reason to do save and update version, but I pretty much don't use the versioning because it's just hard to keep track of what version was what changed in which version. So as a rule, I usually, one way you can save these out and share it with people is if I click up here on the folder, there's this archive project. So if I want to archive this project, it's going to tell me where it's going. I don't know if the one exists. Include existing evaluations. You can check yes or no. It just makes the size different and hit OK. So it's gonna kind of read down here. It says, OK, it's done. It's all notification you get is this little screen down here. But now if I want to do an alternative, I import my highway. Nope, I gotta do something different. Sorry, I click on my name. There we go. My name, and I unarchive a project. And then if I go up to, no, I'm in the wrong, completely wrong space. I always get scared running IHSDM from OneDrive while I'm doing a training. So it's in my temp folder. So under users, you should see my name. And I have my 1 mile freeway in Florida. I'm going to open that. And so it wasn't unique. It said, I renamed it for you. I'm like, oh, thanks. And then I'll come back in. And if you double click or if you right click and go to properties, you can come up here and say, oh, one, right? So here's my new alternative. I've just imported, it could have been everything here. So all this interchange and everything could have been include in that archive file. Now I have an exact replica of my base conditions. So if I want to come in and change the number of lanes, I can get that alternative calculation here. Like I said, it did include that one evaluation as well. So this is probably what I would start to do. You can test out CMS like I did on the previous one. If it's like little things you're doing, but if you're trying to holistically change, then I usually archive and then unarchive it and name it something else, just so I know my base conditions is my base conditions, and the other ones are kind of my playground, right? Like, the dog might go crazy. So, any other questions? I'm not sure I'm gonna have full time to do an interchange, but I'll show you how to get it started. We just might not make it to ramp terminals. Does it sound like a plan? All right. So we're gonna do a new road because that's how we build an intersection. So this would be the same thing you do for an intersection as you do for an interchange. It's a little bit more complicated for an interchange, but it's the same similar process. So cross road for interchange, same defaults, no station equations, thankfully. It's just 2,000 feet long. Its heading is 0 and it's perpendicular to our freeway. The elevation location is at mile or station 5, and again, same elevation height at that, or yeah, at 5. So this is where you go back and it's a little bit different. So we're still urban. However, we're gonna be a undivided 2-lane for our crossroad. So I don't really even have to change anything. So that's the default. Instead of freeway here, we're gonna leave it be the arterial. And then the lane widths are 12, 0, 0. There's no median, right? And you say transversable median, there's no like option for does not exist. So they can cross the center line is pretty much what that's saying. And then just a quick summary, and we're done. It'll open up that evaluation most likely, and I'll have to click cancel. So if I go view this highway, like there's no freeway, right? So I haven't really connected the two together. And that's the one piece that might be a little bit different between the intersections and interchanges. But so it's pretty boring. We know there's 2 roads, we know they're associated, but we'll walk through that process here. Oh, there he is. All right. So now we're going to create our interchange. So interchanges fall under the project. They don't fall under a road. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Ramps and ramp terminals fall under an interchange to kind of keep it together. So if you think about it, all those ramps and ramp terminals make up your interchange. And the interchange is just a thing in space. And then you'll add the pieces and parts underneath it. So interchange. And here's where you just kind of associate the 2 things together. So for the freeway, it's at 2,000. And then here, if you have multiple roads, you could pick the road from these drop-down boxes. But we don't really have anything else. We're going to put put that smack dab in the middle of our crossroad because we're just making it up as we go. So then if I click next and finish, you'll see interchange was added over here. Just like as I was showing in the tutorial set, as you click these, you get different options down in the editor window. So for interchange options, you can add stuff that is a little bit different than under the freeways. So let's create some ramps in our interchange. So again, having the interchange selected here, I'm going to add a new ramp. So a ramp is really just a highway, if you think about it. So this will be called exit ramp. No station equations. Zero, 10, 0, 90 is the heading direction. So east to west, elevations at the midway, 656.17. So again, elevation doesn't really matter for crash prediction. So here we're staying urban. Our alignment is now one direction because we're a ramp. And our functional class is freeway service ramp, I believe. Just for funsies, make sure I'm doing this right. There. And then just like for the crossroad, there's no median. We're just going to leave it transversable, but we do have a 12-foot lane for our lane width. Next, finish, and cancel. I'll click back up on interchange and we'll do one more highway. I'm going to make an entrance ramp. Quickly, next, all the same stuff, right? So 0. This one's not quite due east, but the same elevation. So those angles are really just kind of if you drew a straight line between point A and point B, which way is it headed? And then you add curves to it down the road. Same stuff here, urban, and one direction, add service ramp. Urban, double checking. Finish. And no evaluation yet. So we haven't added stuff. All right. So now in the entrance ramp, we're going to edit this. And this is that same look and feel as the freeway, right? So it shouldn't be new information. So if we come in here and look at the horizontal alignment, we want to add a curve. We'll make this one 200, and maybe we add a curve here, and it's to the end, or to the middle. Curve radius is 300. It's going to the left, and entering speed is 40 miles an hour is what we're hoping they go, what they should be going, right? Don't get me started about the average entering speed. And then we'll do another curve to get us out and get us back connected to our freeway. So start location, again, kind of knows where you ended, right? So 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 8. And the curve radius is 300. And it's to the right this time. And still have 40 mile an hour. So add. And then finally, we'll finish it out with a tangent section for the rest of the segment length. And we'll add. So that's how you kind of manually enter if it's just quick and dirty ramps. It's not too difficult to enter it. You could do in here tabular, but that's it. File, update, same. And then we're going to close this one. Again, if I'm kind of going through this quickly, so if you have any questions or you need me to slow down, please raise your hand. At this point, I'm just trying to show you kind of how the same questions get asked about the different elements over and over and over. And you have to know how that's defined for that site type. But otherwise, it's just a lot of manual data entry, which is in any of these tools. The tool doesn't help you get the data. It just helps you calculate the results, right? So now we're going to connect the ramps to the freeway. So I'm going to click on my 1 mile freeway here. And I'm going to do the edit highway button. And here you can see the ramp connection box, right? We didn't fill this out before, but we still got results. So if you don't have ramps, it doesn't really matter. However, in this case we do. So now we've added ramps, and now we're gonna start to analyze them in conjunction. So it's an entrance ramp we're gonna pick first. I don't know why you have to tell it again, but that's fine. So the core location is there on the main line, and the taper length is 0. And then it is on the right side and is on the outside. And this here comes back that alignment priority. So depending on how you drew this, you might have to go back and think, okay, is it 40 or is it 50? Where is this lane connecting? So it's connecting in between the outside lane and the shoulder. Again, this is just drawing it schematically. It's not really used in the crash prediction at all. So if you add 40 outside, let me double check. Should be good. Then we're going to come up here and pick exit ramp. I'm going to tell it that it's an exit ramp. This one, core location is at 2000s. And the taper length is 0. It's the right side, it's on the outside, and this one is at 30. Add. We're going to close. So now you can see that the interchange 1 element entrance ramp is been connected to our freeway. If I go to file, update, file, close, fingers crossed, now I'm on my freeway. If I click this, I start to see stuff. Hey, my ramps are connected to my freeway, right? Although I still can't see my crossroad. So that comes into, we got to tell the crossroad where these 2 ramps intersect. I'm going to close this guy. So now, how do ramps intersect? Usually at a ramp terminal. So we're going to, underneath the tree element interchange, we're going to add our ramp terminal. So again, trying to keep these pieces and parts of the ramp of the interchange together. So that's, the interchange is kind of that big bucket or overarching piece. So it's a ramp terminal. And here are all the types that are included in IHSDM. So this one, we're only drawing half the diamond, but it's a diamond. We don't have a parklow or anything else. We just have the one side of the interchange that we're going to enter here. And it's so picking D4. If you need help, you click here and you'll get straight to what this is. You can also come into the there was a quicker way to get to the ramp terminal box. Hold on 1 second. You can also use the search feature up here. And then if you click it, you'll get pictures. So I like, usually it's pretty good. It's not as good as Google, but it'll help you find out which one am I. So we're this kind of condition of our freeway where we have an on and off ramp adjacent to each other. So it's you can kind of quickly jump into that practitioner's guide and understand what you're doing or how something's defined. So here, now we start to associate things together, right? So building this intersection. So we have a crossroad and it just tells you the length of the crossroad. And then we're going to tell it where this ramp terminal location is. And then we have to pick what's left. So highway 2 is the entrance ramp. And an entrance ramp starts at 0 and goes to a value. Typically it increases in station. The exit ramps, these guys are a little funny. There's a little quirk in the system, so you can't put it all the way at the end of the station. So you just get darn close. It doesn't matter. As long as it's not exactly the end of the exit ramp, it'll do the calculation. It's just a little bug. So just make it close. So and click next. And then finish. All right, we did forget to add ADT to this. So I'm gonna quickly hop back in here. Let's pick the right road first. I think they're the same. Dogs are fighting on my street, it sounds like. All right, so for this one, again, 2015 volume year. This ramp is 1500. And then we're going to close because that's the entire length of the ramp. File, just like always, file update, file close, go down here to my entrance ramp, and do edit highway button or double click it. And that one is also going to be 1500. I mean, the validate button still work. There's one of those elements that if you had something mixed up, it wouldn't let you save it. So update and close. And now, I think, if we're lucky, click on freeway. And if I view my graph, we get stuff. So everything here, you move these labels around. Kind of helps you understand some of the outputs. That's this, again, some of these, it doesn't know which side of the freeway it's going to. So a few of these aren't drawn perfectly. It's just kind of to give you an idea of how things are. Everything still functions as before. So if you want to see the cross section, you can click somewhere with the red triangle, see the cross section show up. Everything, we just added the interchange. So any questions about how that is? An intersection is super easy. It's essentially what we did for the ramp terminal is what would be an intersection. You build your two roads and you make an intersection. This is just a little bit more complicated because you're not intersecting a crossroad with a freeway. You have ramps that come in and make a terminal. All right, the evaluations for interchanges, I would say, aren't the best. Because you still have to add everything up, some of the parts. So we have, you can include the ramps, so the ramp terminals, you can include whatever you want. So if I click on interchange, do a new evaluation, probably should close this. This is interchange CPN evaluation. Again, if we added something here in that admin tool, you would see it and you would be able to select it. It's like everything else we've done today or in the past. So here's where if you just want to analyze, so if you have both sides of your interchange created inside IHSTM, you can remove half of it and look at the results from one side of it. You can also just look at the ramp terminal, or maybe you just want to know what's happening with the ramps combined. It's really no different to do all three versus one amount. It just takes more time, and you'll see why here right now. So the way this works is you have to run the evaluations for each of the parts of the interchange you want to analyze. So essentially you click on the exit ramp, now you click run evaluation, and guess what? You get the box that says run the evaluation again. So you get the acknowledge that I know what I'm doing is right. We don't have any crash data, so we're not doing that. It keeps the years, so that's cool. One less data entry point, right? But next. Still gives you that ability to modify things. Oh, I should have unchecked that report. Look at him. All right. And then close. And then you just kind of keep doing it. Next. Knowledge. Next. Don't show the report. Run. Usually I forget the last. Don't show the report button, but this time I did at the beginning. All right, so that one ran. All right, we got 2 check marks, 1 more to go. So now we're gonna evaluate the ramp terminal. Knowledge. Same years, same configuration data, no EB. This one's quicker. Run. And good. All right, so now we have all the elements analyzed. Click next. So here it's kind of summarizing what's going to be shown in this interchange report, and you click finish. So this is where it's maybe not helpful to do all of them together, but I'll explain why. So as I scroll through this, you're going to see it starts out with your ramp, exit ramps, and then it gives you a whole set. There was no curvature, nothing for our exit ramp. Is pretty flat. We get our total crashes, we get our segment, we get our curvature table, we get our severity table, we get our crash type distribution. It does give you these evaluation messages. So this one is kind of warning you that you don't have any left or right shoulders on your ramp. So that's helpful. We didn't see that before. So if you probably have a shoulder out there, you might want to go back and do that and reevaluate the interchange. Here, we're now into the entrance ramp. And if I scroll slower, you'll see all the details about the entrance ramp. The disclaimer again. Here we have some curves, right? So that's making sense. However, here's the summary table that I like. number of segments, here's crashes by curves. So again, looks just like the freeway one, right? Has all the same tables for that entrance ramp. Now for the ramp terminal, this guy, right? So ramp terminal 1, evaluation, details, disclaimer. Hey, I didn't have volumes maybe for my crossroad. Crossroad for interchange, it's mad. So it just stopped. So now I gotta go back and close. How did I miss that? This is why I don't like to build roads without volumes as we go. What's my volume of my crossroad supposed to be? This is fun. Where's the tutorial on this? Wait, okay. No, that's a ramp. And that's a crossroad. Cool. Cool. Right. Ramp. Entrance ramp. Oh, my crossroad is 10,000. All right. See, we're getting close to time. So if you have questions, it's kind of how the magic happens, right? You get to the end of your evaluation, you're like, oh, I missed a step. So now if I go back, you'll see under each one of these, the evaluations were run. I can just rerun this ramp terminal 1. And now if I come back to interchange, we just kind of walk through the whole thing again. Anyways, let me just show you that one real quick. Cancel. Cancel. All right, so imagine this in a perfect world. You the last section of that other report would include all of this. So it has your ramp terminal, it has table 2, which is what I really like and look at. And then it has just some basic information, crashes by severity, crashes by collision type, crash type. So the one problem that I don't like about these interchange reports is when you get it at the end, you actually have to go and like add the value, whichever one you select. So 0.16 plus 0.37, so calculator, 0.16 plus 0.37 plus, and I gotta come over to this one because I screwed it up, plus 1.64. And so to know that my total crashes for that side of the interchange is 2.17, like you have to add all those shirts up. It's not the greatest, it's not the worst. So it doesn't really give you that full summary report for all the pieces and parts. It does give you, if you do it correctly, everything in one PDF or one HTML file that you can take with you, but you still have to do that summary step by yourself. So I do want to highlight there's a full 20-hour course almost on this topic. So if you need more IHSTM training, if you're curious about it, we are hiring a contractor to deliver this more frequently. Usually we do it like twice a year at most. If you, I'm going to put this in the chat pod. Anybody can request to host it. It is $75 per participant. And it does kind of I'm confused why the course description has our July stuff in there. Anywho, the session information will be down here. It gives you a description of the course, and so it has some online modules that talk about the other stuff that I didn't really touch on. So the policy review or design consistency review, and it touches on those elements. It also has this example plus some intersection examples and an economic analysis example, which I definitely won't have time to do today. Barely got through, even messed up the interchange one. So it goes through a lot more detail of this tool and application itself. Again, we're currently not, none of those are scheduled to be hosted, but you're welcome to click this host course button and see if enough people sign up. So we have to have a minimum of 10, but there is a maximum of 40 to get it hosted. Any questions while we went over today? I just want to say we boiled 14 hours into 3 hours, one thing. John, you have anything you want to summarize for the group?
No, thank you, Derek. I really appreciate you taking the time to be available today to deliver this. I find that the IHSTM in combination with ISAT-E can, in this format, in the short period of time we deliver it, it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose, but it's a good introduction. And I want to also thank Taylor and Metro Atlanta or Orlando for their assistance in delivering this. And should we hear back and you're interested, we're available to deliver the full-fledged version of this workshop as well as any of the other HSM if needed. So thanks again to everybody for taking the time to join us over the last week and a half here, and best wishes to all. If anything comes up, feel free to reach out. Derek and I are available. john.mcfadden@dot.gov. I'll send this out on the chat pod.
That's what I was doing. Yeah, so we're here to answer questions. We're not totally going away. Don't forget that ihstm.support.dot.gov as well, and they can help you. But really, it's that HSM things. These are just different tools to implement that process. Taylor?
Oh, I was just going to reiterate our thanks to you, Derek and John, for providing these trainings for us, and thank our participants for being involved in this third and final session of the Data-Driven Safety Analysis Virtual Workshop Series. So there is some information that's been included in the chat, John and Derek's contact information that will be included in an email that you will receive next week, which will also include links to the recordings, along with the supplementary materials that have been discussed at each of the 3 workshops. So unless there are any further questions, which I'm not seeing any, I'll say thank you to everyone and have a great weekend.
All right.